You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. I've got my very special guest in the house, Billie Carlson, over at the Public Works facility. I think this is started for your second month, correct?
This is, I think I just passed my 90 days.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's right. Because we missed 1 month because you were starting up.
Right.
And got everything switched around. And how is Public Works in your vision now, 90 days in? Mm-hmm. How does it look to you now compared to the day that you interviewed?
I would say I did a little homework going into the interview, because obviously you want to be prepared and kind of have an idea of what you're talking about when they're, asking you why you're right for the job and things like that. And, you look at the website and everybody knows solid waste and recycling, all that stuff. And I'm looking over and, okay, we've got the fleet division. They maintain vehicles. Okay, yep. You've got operations that kind of handles the drainage and roadways and things like that. And then to go from that to now in understanding, we just had our automotive service professional week, and just looking into, researching that just a couple weeks ago, I realized that we have 8 mechanics and a welder fabricator. And those 9 people service over 700 pieces of equipment, everything from weed eaters to garbage trucks and the amphibious vehicles and fire trucks and ambulances. To me, it's insane, just the sheer volume of work that a department of 8 mechanics and a welder fabricator can handle. And the welder brings in the added aspect of being able to better repair things like the city's roll-offs and dumpsters and things like that, and make some, fixes to vehicles that maybe we couldn't make before. So just the sheer volume of things that Public Works is involved in with the fleet department and the operations, road and drainage, all the street lights and traffic signals and crosswalks. Yep. And there is a lot going on with the Public Works department.
With Public Works being so active
Mm-hmm.
In our community, I mean, Public Works really touches a lot of different aspects of daily life in Northport.
Right.
And I don't think that people really realize how much hands-on Public Works is in their daily life. We're talking water, sewer, the roads, different things like that. And it kind of makes the city click, so to speak.
Right.
Which will take me to another question, or a guide into a question, is that we have an app that we really didn't touch on too much the last time, and I'm sure that you're well versed on it now. But there's an app out there that I've used myself on occasion, and the response and the turnaround time for people who find something out there that Public Works should be notified of. It's a fantastic app. Do you want to explain that to people and the end result, and then I'll tell them a little bit about how it happened for me?
Sure. Well, we've got it's called the North Report app, and it has an issue reporting system that works through this app called C-Click Fix. And so you can go in there, and let's say you're driving down the street and you notice somebody tossed 4 bags of garbage, off in the trees on the side of the road. Or you notice that a stop sign, somebody had a stop sign and it's leaning over. Or like we had a post a couple weeks ago, you come to an intersection and notice there are no street signs. You come to Ponce de Leon and Estates Drive was one that was missing. You can go in there and it can actually use the GPS on your device to pinpoint where you're at. You go through and pick the issue that you're having, whether it's illegal dumping, if you've noticed a gopher tortoise burrow, missing street signs, stop signs. You can go through, report all these things. It goes to the city in general, and then they have someone who sorts it out. It should go to this department or that department. Comes to Public Works, work orders created, and it goes to the appropriate staff. Yep. And it's usually within 2 or 3 days. Most issues they get out and they fix. A lot of things like stop signs they do pretty much immediately because of obvious driving hazards of not having an operable stop sign. But even I had reported a missing street sign out in the estates because I live out there and had noticed it when I was driving around looking at something else. And I mean, it was within 2 days they had new street signs on it ready to go, so you know where you're at. Some of those take a little longer than others because some of those street names are a little more unique, or a little less commonly traveled. So we don't have a huge stockpile of all of them, but it's usually, from what I've seen so far, it's usually within a couple of days they've got it pretty well sorted.
And what's really amazing to me is that it's the communication that you get when you turn in something. It's just not gone. It's right. An update system too for the person who filed the complaint. To me, that was valuable because I knew that somebody responded to it because you get a response.
Right.
The second part of it is they tell you when it's completed.
Right.
And believe it or not, it was the main entrance into Plantation. So anybody about 2 years ago now, maybe a year and a half, that came into Plantation, there were really about 4 different potholes that were forming there. And I took pictures and sent them in. And it's amazing to me how fast that got turned around.
Right.
And the communication that you get kind of makes you feel like the city cares on top of that. And that they really are paying attention to detail in the pictures and making sure they got all the potholes as they go along. So I think if people learn more about the app and how valuable it is, if you see something wrong, just take a picture of it and send it in.
Absolutely.
It's I don't think you guys are not out looking, but to have another 50,000 eyes surveying what's going on in the city and making sure that Public Works is aware of anything that could be a potential hazard.
Right.
Because it is Public Works. In most cases, it's a hazard that you're dealing with, whether it be a pothole or street sign or even recycle bins in the street or left behind. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen.
Right.
And using that system, actually, I think it speeds up Public Works, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Like you said, we have however many people working for Public Works, and we have exponentially more residents who are out on the streets. And, they can be the eyes and ears for us. We can't be on. There are a lot of small side streets in Northport. It's a very large city, landmass wise. So it's difficult for us to be in all places at once. And it certainly makes it easier if someone drives by, snap a picture. You can call customer service even, if you don't want to pull up your phone while you're driving, or if you can make note of it, and you can actually move the dot on when you're reporting the issue. If, let's say, you're driving down Price Boulevard and you notice something off the side near Yorkshire, but you're coming home, off of Genan or, somewhere around Toledo Blade Elementary, you can get home and then go back and go, okay, I saw this, over by Yorkshire. There's, 6 bags of trash and a wooden pallet and a, yard equipment sitting off on the side of the road. Ideally we see everything and we get to it immediately, but obviously that's, not always possible. So for people to be able to go in and say, hey, I saw this here, we will typically, like I said, it's within a couple days. We tend to acknowledge it day of, hey, thank you for reporting this. We've got a work order. We're going to, get on it as quick as we can. And then in the event it takes us longer than a few days, I do follow up with our guys over here. Hey, it's been a little while. Do we know what's going on? And sometimes it's, we're waiting on something.
Right.
We had an issue, I want to say maybe a month ago, where the city had started regrading a swale or a retainer ditch, and the equipment broke down and they had to leave it as it was. And the resident came out and said, hey, this is all kinds of messed up. What's going on? And we were able to tell them, we're working on this. It is something that's active. We didn't just leave you with this eyesore. Unfortunately, the equipment is now in the fleet department to get fixed, and and the fleet department's fixing it, for operations so we can get back. And again, that just goes back to the sheer volume of what Public Works does.
Well, I don't think we realize all the things that Public Works is putting their hands on until we need it.
Right.
We drive down the road and we're not thinking anything about the roads, because for the most part, I got to give a little credit. Most roads in Northport are extremely well maintained. There's not a lot of issue. As a real estate agent, I drive all over the place, and what's really impressive is driving through our town and looking at the roads, even the drainage systems alongside the roads. They're not filled with litter either. You guys are pretty active on keeping debris, free and clear, and getting out there and picking stuff up right away if it happens. And it just makes our town that much more beautiful to drive through. And I don't think people pay attention to that. I think they pay attention more when there's trash on the street than they do when there's no trash. So you don't get a lot of praise for the beautification part of what you guys do either.
Well, and towards the trash end too, our drivers, the solid waste drivers and stuff, that's part of what they do too, is when they're out collecting trash, if they notice something that's out of sorts, they'll report it back. And our operations department is pretty active in trying to get to it quickly. And, when people are happy, they're happy. And that tends to be how it goes, is, you don't call up customer service to go, hey, you guys are doing a great job, keep it up. Usually you call up customer service, it's because you have an issue that you want to get taken care of. And that's kind of how it goes. Another example is the Tropicare repaving. I live out there, so I get some of the residents' complaints. It was shocking when they initially got out there. In the first couple of sections they worked on, they tore down all the way to the base. And I'll admit I wasn't expecting it to be as rough as it was. Some people hit those a little bit faster than I think maybe they were prepared for. And it could be bone jarring if you weren't ready for it. And so that was our primary complaint was, holy crap, why is the road like this? Fast forward to 3 or 4 weeks later, I'd say 90% of Tropicare is now repaved. They've got a little bit more to finish. I believe they're coming out next week after the holidays to wrap up the last of it. I don't know how many people are going to call up Public Works or call up Ajax Paving and say, hey guys, this road it's fantastic. It's smooth as can be now. Great work. Thank you. We have had people that commented on some of the posts and said, thanks for finally doing this. It's coming along. And I would say most of the people, it wasn't necessarily angry, but a lot of shock. Hey, why does the road like this? We had a couple of people that thought that they were just going to leave the road like that and they were done. And Obviously that wasn't the case. We explained, hey, it's a work in progress. They had to kind of brutalize the road to get it back to where we can build it from scratch. But again, it usually you're vocal when you have an issue that you want to get taken care of, and not so much, hey, everything is great in my neighborhood. We're doing great. A-okay, great job. Unless somebody highlights it, and then you go, hey, you're right. You guys are doing great.
So I'm actually glad you said it like you did, because the last several shows I've had, there's been some really hot topics with Warm Mill Springs and actually Price Boulevard, repaving, different things like that, and we had that conversation really about the boisterous people really getting catered to versus the rest of the population that is quiet
Right.
and just sits back and lets it happen. I'm highly encouraging people to get involved at any level that they can, whether it be a piece of volunteer work or just trying to get yourself at least some education on what's happening in our town, because voting matters. We've talked about voting numerous times. Voting matters. Getting information out matters. Getting accurate information into people's hands matter. Things that you guys do with upcoming shows that you've got coming, which you're trying to get more information out about and explain, which is recycling. And we're going to do that next month, I assume, right?
Yes. So we've got Frank Lama, solid waste manager, has agreed to come on with me next month and talk about some of the things that we've been doing to keep recycling costs down as much as we can, to emphasize clean recycling. And we should have, I believe, in the next month, we're supposed to be getting a couple brand new trailers. Or we have the trailers. We're getting the truck to haul the trailers, so that we are entirely self-sufficient as far as collecting the recycling, sorting the recycling, and then transporting to the processing facility. As it is now, we lease the truck and trailer, and we're paying somebody else to haul that and come back, and so when Frank gets on, we're going to try and highlight some of that. And one of the other issues we have is our yard waste. Currently, we bring it down to Port Charlotte to dispose of it, and we are in the process of getting a sorting facility in town so that we can keep our drivers in town. And again, that's just another way that we're trying to, reduce cost. So Frank's going to come on with next month and talk all kinds of. He's the guru. So
yeah, well, that's actually going to be really interesting, and hopefully we'll get some listeners. If you're listening now on WKDW Radio 97.5 FM, we also broadcast live on YouTube and also on Facebook at WKDW.com. You can listen in. Alexa does a great job at playing our station, so it's an easy way to hone in to 97.5 FM if you're in the listening range of Venice down to Punta Gorda over into Inglewood. We've got some hopefully some good news coming in the future. We're trying to get a bigger broadcast area. And hopefully that'll strengthen our signal and give us the range that we need to really stretch up and down the coast a little bit further, because we've got a lot of people that travel, they leave to go to work, and trying to get this information to them as they're driving away, I think is vital to our community really growing and sticking together. And talking about that, you've got a really cool network of people at Public Works that is more like a family than they leave their family and come to work to their family. And I've been at Public Works. I've been to the facility. It's fantastic. I've been in the conference room, and people have treated me extremely well when I've hosted the show from there. And what I've noticed about Public Works is there's never an answer of I don't know or no. It's always, well, let's check into that, or can I find out and get back to you if they don't know the answer.
Right.
I don't find a lot of walls being built. And because you're new, I'm going to ask you in that sort of way, is that, you came into this really not prepared for everything that you're going to get hit with by any stretch of the imagination, but kind of highlight a couple things that you've found out now about your job and Public Works that really kind of blew you away, so to speak, that you just didn't realize.
Well, I will say, I want to add to your point. When I started, again, not a lot of Public Works type background. I know the basics of things that can be recycled, what can, what can't. So when I come in and, resident asks question A, I don't necessarily have the answer. I can do a little bit of homework, but to your point, like, I haven't asked one person a single question where they're like, God, what a dumb question. Everybody is extremely helpful. Everybody from the very beginning has said, if you're not sure, feel free to ask. We'll get you what, the answers you need. And so there are a few things now that I have a better understanding of. So when we have residents, like, for instance, the Frontier internet situation in the estates, when people ask now, I have a better understanding of where it stands and why it was paused. And I know that now. There are still things occasionally that'll come up and I just haven't been asked yet. And so I don't have the answer. Just like you said, I'll go, you know what? Let me look into it. I'll ask who I need to ask over here, and I'll get you an answer. So to your point, yes, the folks here are, at least have been, extremely helpful. For someone like me who's coming in and didn't have all that information just offhand, why would you? And to be able to help residents, there's a lot to know as far as Public Works. There's a lot, like we've talked about, all show. There's a lot Public Works does, and it would be difficult to have every single answer offhand. But the crew here has been extremely helpful in learning all that.
And we don't have mass turnover. Even with the mechanics, I know we've had some recent retirees. And even when I say it like that, the recent retirees, they weren't a few years and gone. They've been there for a long time.
Right.
When you don't have massive turnover, the consistency of repair, the consistency of keeping machines running the right way, keeping up current knowledge on the new machines that come in, that there's so much value that comes with having staff that go the extra mile, and really keep everything running. You before the show, we kind of talked a little bit about some of the mechanic stuff. You want to highlight some of that and kind of give some kudos out to those guys because of how they handle things?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we kind of touched on earlier, we've got 8 mechanics and we've got a welder fabricator. And just the sheer volume of things these guys work on, to keep lawn equipment running, so, guys can maintain the right of way, to keep the garbage trucks, running and operable so that we can collect the thousands of tons of garbage we collect, to keep the bulk pickups trucks functional so we can go around and collect all these big piles of stuff. And it's insane to me, the sheer number of vehicles they're responsible for to keep maintained. And to think, if we don't have a quality fleet division, what happens with the cop cars that break down? And what happens when a fire engine breaks down or an ambulance breaks down? If we don't have the quality fleet division that we have, are we outsourcing that? How much money are we going to spend to outsource that to another department? So to be able to keep all that kind of stuff in-house, and just for them to be able to handle that sheer volume of workload, I'd have to pull up his file. One of our employees of the year was Steve Cassell. I emailed him originally and said, "Hey, Steve, I'm going to do a social media post on you, and just looking for this, how long you've been here, exactly what you do, this and that and this and that," and hadn't heard back from him. And then I followed up a week or two later just to touch base with him, and he, the list was it keeps going and going and going. I'm like, you know what? It's okay. I assume you just missed the email because you're extremely busy. So all those guys have a lot on their plate, but they do it and they do it well. And they're vital to keeping the city operable, from everything to fire trucks and ambulance and police vehicles. And it's insane. It really is.
Even the small equipment.
Yes.
We're not talking about we're talking weed whackers and
right.
different things like that. We're talking the amphibious vehicle that really keeps our canals in much better condition than they have been in years.
Right.
But these are mechanics that are flexible enough in their
extremely versatile.
Yeah, you talk about a range of equipment that they have to be prepared to fix.
Right.
And I think we're the only one in Florida that has an amphibious vehicle like we have right now.
Right.
I don't know that there's another one. So, they have to get versed on a piece of equipment that's not even readily available anywhere else
right.
to learn.
Right. So, and again, that speaks to, if we didn't have the ability to fix that, where are we going to have to send that, or who are we going to have to outsource that work to get that fixed? And in that vein, aside from the cost of outsourcing that to someone else, how long is that piece of equipment going to be out of commission?
Right.
So to be able to have that all in-house, it speeds up the timeline on getting things fixed, and I have to think on some level save cost of maintenance. To we don't have to outsource that. We don't have to send it to Tampa or Miami or whatever other big city that might have someone to fix that.
So I'm gonna bet that you don't have the answer to my next question, and it's okay.
Okay.
Because I fully expect you not to have it. Okay. But
okay.
I would also like to maybe have the conversation about it, because everything that you've mentioned over and over again was really cost savings and how keeping it in house saves us money.
Mm.
How much would we spend if we did outsource everything? And that's the question that I know you're not going to have the answer to, but I think it's a valuable question, and somebody has to have that number or projection of what it would cost if we sent everything out for a year.
Right.
I think that's the budget that we all as taxpayers need to understand that we possibly could have to pay.
Right.
If we didn't keep it in-house.
Right.
And because you guys are working so hard to tamper down a lot of the costs and keep the taxes, at least this side of the tax reasoning, down.
Right.
I think that's the support system that we need to kind of talk about too, maybe in the future, is how it would have cost this much to fix a vehicle outside of sending it in-house. and that's tax dollars. That's, I hope I'm teeing this up for you for a show down the road.
Sure.
That I think is really going to be valuable, because every show that I've done with Public Works, we've gone the angle of we're always trying to find a way to cut costs. We're always trying to find a way to make it recycling better. We're always trying to find a way to repair streets much quicker so less damage occurs.
Right.
And I don't think people really understand in rainy season, when a pothole starts, it's best to get it right away, not to let it go 2 weeks, because that pothole becomes a giant pothole after that.
Sure does. And then after enough rain, you can't see it because it's full of water.
That's exactly correct. So, and then the damage occurs to people's vehicles.
Right.
So, I don't care how minor the hole is in the street. I try to take a picture and send it in.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the minute that you guys are on it, even if it's just a layer of asphalt missing, the minute you guys go out there and you take care of that business, you're not talking, massive hole. You're not talking, oh my gosh, now we're down 2 or 3 layers.
Right.
And it causes all kinds of issues down the road for that piece of asphalt, because you're causing erosion underneath the road.
Right.
And I just look at the cost savings that you guys talk about.
Right.
And then I think, well, if you weren't there, what would we pay?
Right.
And you don't have the answer to that, do you?
Well, I would say not necessarily overall.
And that's fair.
As far as outsourcing, the work that Fleet does, or if we had to outsource pothole repair and, the traffic signals and street lights and everything that we work on. But just to give you an example, again, to go back to recycling, there are things that we can control. There are things that we can't. So if the landfill that we take our garbage to decides, well, next year we've got to increase the tipping fee, we don't have control of that. But what we do have control of, and it's us and it's also the residents, is the more we recycle, the less that goes to the landfill as garbage. If we're doing the recycling right and we're doing it clean, the processing center is able to sell that recycling material on the aftermarket, and we get a rebate for it. That helps us keep the recycling cost down. And if we can keep the recycling cost down, we can try and offset whatever fees may come about on the other side, on the garbage side, things like that. So again, it's one of the, if we didn't sort our own recycling, and that was one of the first things Frank Lama told me on like my second day here. We went out to the recycling center. He said the center itself cost, I think, like 300 something thousand to put up and install. And within 2 years, we had saved something like $175,000 a year, something crazy like that, just because we were able to sort out the recycling before we brought it to the processing center and sort out the waste and bring them clean recycling material. And that recycling center paid for itself within 2 years. And so if we're able to save that money, again, that's where we can keep costs down, where we can control.
Well, and I like how you put that, because, running I think running a city is like running a business, and you're always looking for a way to cover your expenditure and not dig yourself a hole. And it's ironic we're having this conversation about budget, and every single department has a budget. Everything that the commissioners vote on, there's part of the budget. The numbers go in. They're plug and play, so to speak, and the value in that for the listener now in Northport is understanding that we didn't have that processing center before.
Right.
And that cost was not good for us, or the effect of that, not having that process center was not good for us as a tax base, because
Right.
we were not recouping the amount of money we're recouping today because it's cleaner recycling. Correct?
Right. Well, and that's the one cost is when we're bringing the recycling as we collect it to the process center, and then they kick out so much as garbage, as waste, as debris, we're getting less of a kickback because the recycling material isn't as clean. We've brought more waste to them. And on top of that, you've got the added cost of having to take our recycling trucks out to the processing center, which I believe is in Sarasota. So you've got that drive every day with however many recycling trucks back and forth. And we're saving that now because they're only traveling within Northport. They drop off their material and then they come back and they're in town, and there's less cost there. So, I mean, it's kind of a multifaceted cost saving, I guess, operation there with the recycling center compared to what we were doing before. Obviously, there's expenditure, but it's far less than what it would have been, what it was before.
Right. Well, and listen, you're running budget wise much better than you would have if we didn't have the center.
Exactly.
And that ultimately is the goal. It's not that you're out there touting, look how much cash flow we're bringing in.
Right. Right.
You're really looking at it and saying we're controlling our budget much better because we have it, because it ends up bringing in more of the, I don't want to call it revenue, but it's sort of revenue in that regard with the rebate, but you're making our recycling more valuable to the purchaser,
right?
Which in no uncertain terms brings our budget down and keeps our taxpayers happier.
Right.
So I'm looking forward. I'm really looking forward to having this discussion with Frank. I'm glad we teed it up for next month, because
absolutely,
I don't think people really realize how much effort at the city level, at public works level, that goes in to maximizing recycling. I think we walk out and we put things in the trash can. We don't think about it. We think, it's just going to recycle. It's going to recycle.
Right.
Well, that contamination is the reason we have the recycling center.
Exactly.
And people next month are going to learn a lot more about that. And I every time we've done any type of conversation on recycling, there's always something new that's learned. And hopefully I'm going to do some advertising to push that information out. And hopefully we'll get some good feedback. If you've got questions about recycling or even this show, if you're listening on Facebook and you want to type in a question, it will pop up on the screen. We'll be glad to answer it. If you think Public Works is doing a fantastic job, type it out there. Let them know. There's nothing better than letting the city staff understand what Public Works means to you. If you've got some great stories to tell them. Put them on Facebook here real quick, and let the staff there know, because it really makes our city flow much better. Everything about what you guys are doing there really seems to me to push things forward in a manner that keeps the budget in check, the morale high, and the city moving forward.
Right.
And I don't know a better definition for a Public Works than that.
Absolutely.
Are we projected to do the rodeo again soon? I know we kind of have a hesitation with COVID and stuff, but are we get back on task with the scheduling of events?
We haven't had a discussion yet. I don't think, at least it hasn't been discussed with me. I know it's obviously hugely popular. I know there was talk about how large it's gotten. There might be concern there, whether that happens on the public works grounds. Obviously, that makes it easier for us to have all the vehicles right here. But I know there's some desire to do it again, but I don't know. We've had the conversation yet about.
Okay.
And we're still a solid 8 months from when we would be doing it, 7-8 months. Because it's usually early February. So hopefully we have that conversation. I look forward to it. I've brought my kids a couple times, and I know everybody has a blast, and the kids love seeing all the trucks and seeing the police demonstration and seeing what the garbage guys are capable of with the trucks. And the kids get the chance to hop in the truck and operate the garbage arm, the claw to pick up the can and dump it in, and really everybody loves it. I don't know that I haven't talked to anybody who's just not had a good time there. So there are plenty of reasons to do it again. I'm hopeful that we will, but we haven't had the conversation yet.
That's all right. We're 7-8 months out from that. That time frame is going to disappear like there's no tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And we'll be sitting here going, I can't believe we put this together in the last 3 or 4 months.
Right.
Pull it off because you have a working plan now. You're just trying to tweak things as you go to make it better each and every time.
Right.
The support, the community support that you have for that is massive. So it's a good thing. And I think it's a really great way for you guys to get information out into people's hands that maybe normally wouldn't have time to think about other than drive past the facility.
Right.
And not even think about what the facility holds. It's a whole different ball game when you're being part of this show and trying to encourage people to understand where their tax dollars goes, how it affects the city. And really, I think the biggest thing I continue to pick up each and every show is the word budget always comes in mind when we talk. I think everybody that is at Public Works has maybe even just subconsciously gone into this mode of how can we make this better? How can we save money? And how can we keep our budget in check? Are you finding that as a new employee? Are you finding that to be the case?
Yeah. I mean, everything I've seen has seemed to be, when we make new processes or whatever, it's always a budget conscious decision. And to keep harping back on the recycling and solid waste thing, like every move that I've seen Frank Lama make has been in a way that we can see cost savings. So, like the yard waste station that we're trying to get in place, not having to run our trucks all the way down to Port Charlotte and all that stuff, keeping them in-house, in town to save money that way. Just like overall, it seems it's very, very much budget conscious for sure. There's the understanding that there are costs to everything that we do, but how can we minimize those costs? How can we work to kind of keep them as tight as we can?
Well, and I noticed that you said it earlier in the show that there are costs that you can control or at least work with. There are other costs that are inflicted, and I'll use the word inflicted on you, because you don't have any control. Right. And when you don't have any control, they're inflicted onto you, and you have to work around that scenario. Because the end result is whatever their number is, we're going to pay it.
Right. Exactly.
There's no other place to put trash.
Exactly.
There's no other place to take recycling. They're limited. And when you have that, and I don't want to use the word monopoly, but I don't know anybody that's opening trash dump sites up and down the coast. It's pretty regulated, pretty tough to do. But at the same time, if we want to minimize the trash that goes to the dump, recycling is the key. And we're going to talk about that next month. But I really liked how you framed what is in our control versus what is out of your control. And I'm hoping that Frank, and I know he will, I'm hoping that he comes in and really opens up that can of worms that says, here's what we can't control.
Right.
What we can control, we're trying to really, I want to call it specialize in what we have to do to really keep everything running smooth and not have a spike in expenditure where you may have to spend now, like on the sorting station, but down the road it's going to pay it back.
Exactly.
And he knows those numbers. He knows those breakdowns. I have had Frank on the show before. I believe it's been well over a year and a half. And I knew that he was working on trying to get the Port Charlotte run taken care of by having that to open up. And I think it's a great thing. I mean, he's already shown with the recycle center itself, the number actually works. And it works to our advantage as consumers. So I'm looking forward to that show. I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm glad that you're working hard with me to put it together.
Absolutely.
I'm overjoyed with that, and I really appreciated you coming on today. It's even though we kind of highlighted some things, it's really good for the community to listen in on what's happening with Public Works and maybe learn to appreciate as they're driving down our roads that we don't have potholes in. That we are pretty special here in Northport. I think we got a great crew that really look out for us, and I'll just give you guys a thanks from this side because I've driven other cities, not necessarily our neighbors, but you go to other different cities and you realize that man, we are clean. We've got our stuff picked up. Our parks look great, even though Public Works isn't parks, but there's roads, there's streams coming through a lot of those parks, and you guys are on those. They're connected that way, and that's where I see it. I just see this tight knit of people trying to make the city a better place.
Absolutely.
So we've got about 3 to 4 minutes. That I promised you. And one of my last guests, last 2 shows that I had, they said it's the fastest hour in Northport or fastest hour in Orlando. And I love it. I think it is. It goes pretty daggone quick. What do you think now that you've been in this position a whole 90 days? So we're going to put this massive amount of pressure on. And I'm going to dump this right in your lap. But, I love the fact that you're coming up with the recycling side of it, because I think that is a hot topic anytime, because it really, people need to understand that. My wife even pounded it in my head as she'd listen to the show and she'd, you can't put that there. Put that over here. So and it's habit. It's breaking people's habits.
Sure.
Recycling. But what are some of the other hot topics that maybe you have in your mind that that might be something the public needs to know about? What do you think are some of the things that are out there?
Well, some of the things we're going to be coming out with probably in the next week or so. One is a recycling topic. It seems to come up probably, every few posts we have on recycling is pizza boxes. There's a lot of debate because some towns, they just straight up won't take them because of grease. Some places don't care. You just toss whatever with your pizza box. It's okay. So there hasn't really been a consensus. It doesn't seem like among residents. So I'm looking to get with our recycling guys this week and kind of go over what makes a pizza box not recyclable. What does a great recyclable pizza box look like? What does a not so great box look like? So we're going to look to highlight that soon. And then the one other big thing we have is the bulk pickups. When people call in for bulk pickups, you got couches or you just redid your flooring in your house and you got a bunch of carpeting roadside and stuff. When you call Public Works, they recommend not placing them under wires. And one of the common misconceptions we have is people think, well, it's the wires that run in front of my house where the power is. It's not under that. Those typically aren't an issue because they're, however many feet back they have to be from the side of the road. It's the wires that actually cross a street. And sometimes we get people who don't really take that into account. And we've got a couple videos that we're going to put out this week. We're going to edit down to one where you can see when it's under the wire, the arm for the bulk truck, just like you can't move. Essentially, it's impossible for them. We've got some skilled guys on the bulk trucks, and it doesn't matter. There's not really a whole lot you can do to pick up stuff when it's directly under a wire. You can't even get the arm out of the truck without risking, taking down the wire and cutting power to everybody.
Yep, I agree. Well, those are two really good topics. I look forward to talking with you more about them, and we'll get some people involved. It's been, great talking with you. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you next month. I'm looking forward to talking to Frank.
All righty. Well, we're excited. Frank is the guru on all things recycling, and so we're excited.
Awesome. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio 97.5 FM and Billie Carlson with Public Works saying thank you and have a good night. Good evening. Be safe on the way home. No speeding. Slow down. Have a great one.